Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Wimbledon of chess, Tata Steel. This is the 2025 edition with many very strong and talented junior players playing. We don't have some of the biggest superstars in chess, but we do have one superstar, and that is the current defending world champion, Gukesh. And today, he was attacked, and he was attacked mercilessly. And I will show you that game, and I will show you some other exciting ones. And before we do that, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Henson Shaving. Folks, look at me. I need a shave. But did you know that if you were born after 1970, there's a very good chance your first razor was a multi-blade razor? It's been the status quo for like half a century. But where has that gotten us? Well, according to a recent study, 2 out of every 3 men report that they expect irritation after every time they shave. And the crazy thing is, there is virtually nothing out there on how to prevent it, just how to treat it. And this is why Henson Shaving wants to transform the shaving industry. And they want to do it not through gimmicks like a subscription service or some moisturizing strips, but rather through groundbreaking research on how shaving impacts your skin. And Henson actually makes all of their razors in their aerospace machine shop in Canada. That same shop manufactures parts for the Mars rover and the International Space Station. Henson has made it so the blade extends just 0.0013 inches past the shaving plane of the razor, which is less than the thickness of a human hair. And folks, I've already said this. In 2025, I'm not taking on that many sponsors on this YouTube channel, but Henson Shaving is an exception. They make an exceptional product. The Henson razor works with standard dual-edge blades that cost less than 10 cents each. So once you own a Henson razor, it'll cost you between like $3 and $5 to replace your blades every year. The razor itself is made of aluminum, so there is no plastic involved. In fact, Henson doesn't even use plastic in any of their packaging. So folks, it's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that'll last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/Gotham to pick the right razor for you and use code Gotham to get a free shave cream along with your razor. Just make sure to add it to your cart. That is a free Henson Shave Cream when you head to hensonshaving.com/Gotham and use my code Gotham. So now you can go looking like this to this. Now, let's get back to the video. As always, a massive shout out to the handsome and inimitable GothamChess, the sponsored GothamChess. Like I said, by the way, this year, I will not be doing a lot of integrations on this channel. I am going to be focusing primarily on Chessly, but I really do like Henson, actually. And I didn't, use their blade to, cut my hair. That I went to a barber. Hopefully you like the haircut. Actually, I don't really care, to be honest, because I like the haircut. And that is the type of self-belief I hope to instill in every single one of you. Believe in yourself. Love yourself. Now, let's talk some chess. Today was actually a relatively peaceful day. Today, there were many draws, but there was a lot of interesting chess, especially out of the Challengers section. In the Challengers section, you have a lot of hungry young players because they didn't have lunch, but also their ratings are all over the place. They're capable of performing at 2600 or 2300 or 2450 or everything in the middle. And here we have a battle between Divya Deshmukh, who I believe is either 18 or 19 years old, and Faustino Oro, who is a baby. Dude is like 11 years old. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable. He's an 11-year-old, 2447 FIDE rated player. So the next time, you feel like you've accomplished something, Faustino's got you beat. The game begins with knight f3. Knight f6 played by Faustino, g3, and Faustino plays b5. All right, my man goes for a very aggressive counter-attacking move. We have bishop g2, bishop b7. And basically, Black is sort of trying to say, well, you wanted to put your bishop there, but now I'm putting my pawn here, and you're not going to easily play any of the c4 systems. The problem is that after a4, White gets a very pleasant game and a very nice position. If Black takes on a4, of course, you just leave yourself with split pawns. So normally here, Black is playing b4. And then White is playing castles, and after e6, White sort of chooses what to do. The most critical plan here for White is generally to play some form of like a5 and then make sure this pawn is traded. Divya plays d3. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this move. c5 and e4. And already things are getting determined in the position. Like, White's can obviously try to put a knight here. Maybe White is going to advance. Black is going to maybe try to play a5. We will see. For now, d6 is chosen. And now, again, it's a moment where White should probably play a5. Like, every time I have this position with Black, White always tries to shove this pawn forward to make it uncomfortable for me. Divya plays knight bd2. I don't think there's anything wrong with this move. And she puts the knight on c4, and she plays rook e1. So completely normal chess thus far. Faustino plays knight c6. And quite soon, the game is going to get quite spicy. So we get bishop to f4. And obviously, with 4 pieces pointing at the e5 square, knights, bishop, and rook, likely this move is going to happen. Black can play e5. But then that kind of weakens the light squares. So maybe white is going to even play like bishop c1 or d2 and then try to reposition the knight on these 2 squares. But honestly, every decision in this game in a closed position is reasonable and playable. Rook c8, and now Divya plays h4, which is a common move nowadays, just to kind of, move the pawn 2 squares in front of your king like this to sort of stop everything here. The computer is already deciding that knight h5, bishop d2, and the players will repeat moves. It doesn't even want to continue to play, but now Divya goes for e5, and the position begins opening up. A pawn break in the center, which leads to a trade. Faustino jumps his knight into d5, hitting the bishop on f4, and now we have queen g4. Queen g4 is threatening some really nasty stuff, actually. White is a move away from winning the game here. The move is knight takes f7, a nasty sacrifice. Always look at pieces near your opponent's king, which are only protected by the king, and specifically pawns. Anytime you see a pawn that's only going to be protected by the king, you're always looking at ways to exploit it. And that is why Faustino here plays knight d4, which activates his bishop potentially and also defends the pawn on e6 from any tactics. c3, knight f6, queen back to d1. Faustino trades off some pieces and gets to this position where everything, I have to tell you, looks quite stable. And life looks pretty good for black. I mean, black has a very pleasant position. Now Divya plays h5, which is a very committal move, trying to get, black to not ever move the g-pawn. And Faustino goes here. Faustino has a massive time advantage, double white's time. And it is a bit of a frustrating position for white, because white sort of felt like they had momentum. But now Faustino is going to demonstrate. Now remember, he's 11. All right, this dude is not supposed to have patience, poise. He's not supposed to just like wait. And he kind of hesitated here, and he allowed Divya to come in with knight c6. Looks like rook c6 is possible. It's not, because you deflect the queen away. And Divya actually does get a nice position here. Faustino just goes for counterplay. And Divya's got 23 minutes to figure this out. So first thing she does is she loses the pawn on c3. She gives away the pawn on c3. And the winning move here for white is really hard to find. It's rook c1. And when the queen continues to stay in the position, you play knight c4. And after knight c4, rook c4, the queen is stuck, and bishop c1 is a threat. Like, the knight is just hanging, but this is the winning plan. Very difficult to spot, and so Divya ultimately goes here and plays knight g6 and tries to force the issue, grabs the knight, and plays pawn takes g6, and is like, all right, I'm like, materials equal, but Faustino launches counterplay, and because white only has 5 minutes, a pawn is falling, and here stabilizing the position can be difficult. Do you play rook c1? Do you play rook b1? e4, nice counterattacking move, and there were slightly more accurate ways to play this, but a6 on the board, knight to g4 check, very tactical. Knight takes f2 is a double check, and now he grabs another pawn. His queen is hanging, her queen is hanging. Rook d7, knight b2. Black is up 3 pawns. So you would think, now 2, you'd think that black is winning, but no. It's actually really hard for black to move here. And now we enter a whole nother phase of the game, which goes on for another 30 moves. Rook a8, Faustino looking to make some trades, and she's just going to start picking up some of his pawns. Knight b6, and we are heading for a draw, of course. Right? It's just an extra pawn for black, but bishop versus knight, there's nothing there. Knight d7, knight f8. I mean, look at his pieces. He's not going to make any progress here. Ultimately, this will become rook and knight versus, king and rook, because if you trade one pawn and then this pawn promotes and then you end up giving up the bishop for the pawn, that's sort of where we're headed. King h7, knight f8. I mean, yeah, white is doing a nice job here. Okay, black is making some progress, but nothing special. King f3 looking a little scary. Whoa, the king went a little bit far. The king was sort of hunted out of his little territory very nicely by Faustino. And suddenly, Divya's losing. She's losing because the king is totally kicked away, and knight e8. And you may be wondering, what's the problem? Why did Divya resign here? Well, after bishop to e5, it's knight c7 check. And this is completely losing for white. The king is cut off from 6 files, and these pawns and king just walk up the board. You will never stop black from promoting here. This was kind of a crazy thing because it looked like everything was cozy, but suddenly Faustino walked in, and it was not an easy position for white, whose king gets fished out, and now black has all the winning chances, and he ends the game in style. Faustino getting another win. He has 2 wins in the tournament, and now he's at break even. He's lost 3 games to some very strong players, and he has 2 wins, so a big win for the young man. And then we go to the Masters section, and here we had 2 games. We had some exciting chess. We had Sarana versus Fedoseev, which is an exciting matchup because this is a matchup of obviously 2 very strong Russian-born grandmasters now representing Serbia and Slovenia. They are just monster players. And Fedoseev has 2 wins over 2800s in the tournament. He beat Erigaisi and Caruana back-to-back. I mean, it's unbelievable. Now he's playing 2677. I mean, easy money, right? Pfft, come on. 2677 is nothing. Well, let's see. So first we have Queen's Gambit declined. Right, Knight c3, Bishop e7. This is a very classic and historic variation. Queen going to c2, Knight f6. And in this line, black is trying to develop the light-squared bishop, but is unable to, which is why a lot of people here play g6 and bishop f5. Fedoseev plays a move that I have not quite seen, but, you know, obviously black is going for counterplay against the white knight. That's what he does. Bishop d3, and now knight a6. And black is equalized from the opening. Queen a4 is on the board, queen b6 hitting the pawns, queen b3 trying to get a queen trade, and bishop f5. Fedoseev has a fantastic position. It's like everything you can ask for in a Queen's Gambit declined, but now we have bishop takes, pawn takes, and the knight comes out to e2, trying to go to g3, and trying to take the pawn. Now knight b4, castles, castles, queen d1, and bishop g6. Fedo is just, he's so good. His prep has been good. The positions that he's getting are good. I mean, everything is good. He's going to put a knight on d3. Like, you just cannot beat this guy. Like, he's playing on another level right now. You know, his chess is like, he's like 27-30 unofficially. He's out preparing people. He's getting great positions. Bishop g3 chosen. Obviously, the idea here is to put the knight on f4, and Fedo plays f5. Ambitious play. Blocking his own bishop, but trying to move the light-squared bishop, and then obviously plant the knight in the center of the board. Knight f4, bishop f7, a3. But suddenly the momentum shifts. And from just a few moves prior to this position, you know, from this position to a few moves later, yeah, black is on the back foot. You know, white gets a lot of advancement here, Fedoseev backing up, and now d5 crashing into the black position, and now rook c1, and in a span of like 7 moves, Fedoseev loses control of the game. You know, it wasn't easy what to do here. Of course, the most natural move is knight d3. Probably he didn't like something just with quite simple play. He didn't think that it was ambitious enough. So he went for f5, and it was too ambitious. Now watch as black goes backwards, and backwards, and backwards, right? And now sideways, and white is just making, every move is making progress. Queen a4, rook d1, knight b5 attacking the queen. Another forward move, another forward move, another forward move, another forward move. Okay, this one is backwards, but that's because the rook was hanging. But it's kind of insane that from move 16, look how many forward moves white made. Knight to f4, forward, 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 improving. Not forward, but at least bringing the rook into the party. Forward, improving, forward, forward, forward. Like every single move is creating a threat. And then he dips out of the position. And then he goes forward again, pawn to d6. And coupled with the dark squared bishop, you know, on e7 and d8, the pressure is just overwhelming here. Right, and black is unable to defend the position because knight is struggling to move, rook is struggling to move. Fedoseev plays h6. He's trying to go g5. Just the bishop gallops in, and a great position for Sarana. b5 going for counterplay. That is ultimately just a free pawn, and now the knight on a6 is also destabilized. But I mean, when you're trying to create counterplay, you do things, and queen e8 is a nice trick. Now it looks like black is up a piece, but d7 is game over because rook c8 is coming in, and the pawn is going to promote. You have to go here, and a nice move here to promote a queen. Could not even take the rook and promote a queen. He promotes a queen, rook d8, knight e8. And, you know, Sarana has to convert this position, but he will. He's got the 2 rooks. Knight d5 check is a nice move. Now it's just 2 rooks versus rook and knight. Rook versus 1 knight is a draw. Two rooks versus rook and knight is probably a draw. But with this many pawns on the board, it is not a draw, and this is why. You will lose your pawns. And knight d6, g4 is a nice move, splitting the pawns completely. Pawn takes, rook g5, black will lose all the pawns and then go on to lose the game. And after g4, Sarana won the game because Fedoseev resigned. So Sarana beats the guy who just beat two 2800s, which is why top-level chess is just so wild and unpredictable. And Sarana's a great player. He hasn't played that many, hasn't played like a crazy amount of top-level events, but yeah, up to 2685 now. He had 5 draws and a big win, and now he has to play Caruana in the next round. But of course, the main event, this was a fantastic game. This game was theater. This game was incredible. So let's go. E4 from Nodirbek Abdusattorov, who, by the way, is leading the tournament. May I remind you, he is, okay, these are the challengers after 5 rounds, but, you know, he was in first place. And I can prove it to you by showing you this. So it's 4-4, right? Prague with 4, and Abdusattorov, right? So Gukesh with the black pieces. Abdusattorov wants to make a statement. Also, in case you don't know, this is low-key one of the spiciest rivalries in chess, because these guys played each other at the Olympiad as well. And Nodirbek defeated Gukesh at that Olympiad because I believe Gukesh was perfect. This was several Olympiads ago, if I'm not mistaken. At this point, all the results jumble in my head. But we go for an Italian, bishop c5, and Nodirbek plays a4, which is like not what they play here. I mean, you do something in the center generally, or you castle. a4 is kind of a funny move, you know. It's been played 9 times ever, but the point is you're going to end up playing c3 anyway. So knight f6 is chosen by Gukesh, and d3. I mean, obviously, like what else? d6, and now a5. And black here generally should play a6. Like in most of these Italians, when the white pawn gets to a5, black plays a6 for 2 reasons. First, this pawn is always stuck in the line of the knight. And second, if white ever plays c3 and then ultimately b4, the bishop will go to a7. So most people do not allow white to do any of this nonsense. a4 and a5, and they play a6. Gukesh plays bishop check. Look, he gives a check, bishop d2, and says, you know what? Let's trade the bishops, castle, castle, and let's play this position. But this is a success. This is a success for Nodirbek. This is a success for the white position, because now black is going to struggle. Black needs the bishop in the Italian. I mean, if you just think about the balance of the bishops, right? Both guys brought their bishops out. One guy then proceeded to trade his bishop off, which leaves white with the bishop. Now, if black in this position just tries to quickly play bishop to e6, white will probably weaken the structure, and this position is not much better for white, but it is better for white. But also there are lines where you don't even have to do this. I mean, you can just play like c3, and if takes, you can take with a knight, reposition, and have very nice control of the light squares, and in the long run, black will have weaknesses in the endgame. But again, these are all microscopic advantages that for the average eye, and even for my eye, which is, you know, my prescription is not the best, but it's my eye in chess is probably slightly above average. You know, the exploitations of those positions are quite difficult to exploit. Terrible definition, but you get my point. c3, knight g6. Okay, he transferred the knight over to g6, gets out of the way of anything over here, and wants to play c6 and d5. Very normal stuff. Rook e1. By the way, Nodirbek has not thought. Nodirbek is blitzing the entire game. And Nodirbek's next move is d4. Gukesh plays h6. He has a plan. His plan is knight h7, knight g5. It's a common idea in both Italians on both sides. Now Nodirbek thinks, because h6 is not the top move of the computer. The top move of the computer is bishop d7 and try to play b5, which is not very Italian. You know, that's not really a thing in the Italian. Rook b8, b5 at least makes sense, but then you're getting your rook off the a file, so Gukesh chooses a plan. It's not the best plan, and as you see, Stockfish immediately off the defibrillator is like, brrr. Oh, white is doing well. d4. Knight back to h7, and now rook e3. Rook e3 has a very simple point. One day you will trade the knight and use the rook to attack your opponent. That is the point. And then maybe sometimes back here having freedom will be useful. You'll end up putting the queen behind. I don't know. Something like that. The rook is just generally useful along the third rank in Italians. Knight g5, queen g5, and maybe from a distance, rook g3 was a vague idea. It is definitely possible, but then you have to evaluate whether or not you actually have an attack. Instead, he goes here, weakening the light squares near his king, however, restricting the knight on the g6 square from ever making any forward progress. Bishop g4 played, and now a very nice counter-attacking move, h4, using the pawns in front of his king. Queen goes to h5, the queen goes to b3, and Nodirbek looks at Gukesh in the face and says, why are all of your pieces over here? You don't have anything. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in over here and eat everybody. Yeah, Gukesh now has to play very ugly defense. Knight f1, knight h2, rerouting, looking to grab the bishop, and all of the momentum is suddenly on the other side. Gukesh has to go queen g6. Nodirbek plays de, de, and rook d1. Could have played some other moves, but rook d1 all makes sense. Now, we talked about initiative, right? This is a weakness. This is under pressure. Knight goes to c6. Now, a6, the entire purpose of the opening. That pawn went to a4 earlier in the game. Now it's going to a6. And it's undermining the defense of the black position. Gukesh's position is hanging by a thread. It is moments from falling apart. The move that Gukesh plays here is unfathomable. Bishop back to c8. It takes a resounding lack of ego to play bishop c8. And I'm saying it as a compliment. Like, it's such an ugly move. Like, you are admitting something has gone wrong. But Gukesh is like, do something about it. h5. More progress being made hitting the queen. Nodirbek calling all the shots. Queen e6, bishop c4, every single move. Look at this. Look at the queen getting hit around like a piñata. Queen f6, queen e6, queen e7. But Gukesh is not going down. He's getting hit with punches, and he's not going down. Queen to e7, queen back to a4, so that there's nothing, no tempo on the queen. Now, another move by Gukesh, knight d8. This is Karpovian. If you don't know what that means, Anatoly Karpov was one of the best defensive players and positional and strategic players ever in chess. And there is something in chess called the 8th rank Karpov defense. Karpov used to just defend himself like this. This must be so infuriating. 5 out of 6 of the opponent's pieces are lined up on the last rank of the board. You literally cannot get more cornered. And White just doesn't have a win. White expanded into the position, but doesn't have a knockout punch. So now he has to take. Now here comes the bishop. Now every move White makes has a small consequence. Because now, here comes Black's pieces. Right, so like, he wasn't able to put him away. So now he has to play b4. Another bit of resources being used by the White position. b4. Bishop d5, looking to trade the bishops and activate the rook. Still, White is better. White is better. Black has a lot of weaknesses. These pawns are not very good. There's a lot of weak squares around the Black position. e5 is a big target. Gukesh plays queen e6, doing a nice job managing his time as well. Locking in. Rook back to e2, ready to reroute, maybe ready to double. c6. Now rook a5. I mean, apparently, rook c5 was maybe the way to go, going for that endgame, but maybe we will get that anyway. Rook a5, right? There it is. And here comes the knight. Now, Gukesh is only human. He's going to try to quickly stabilize the position. Takes rook c5, rook a7, rook c3. This is still looking like a draw, but all of the initiative is still with White. The knight is hanging. The pawn is a target. This pawn is hanging. Gukesh plays knight back to e8 and loses a pawn. So now Gukesh actually has something tangibly less than his opponent. Not just a bad position. Knight to f6, rook to e7, right? And Nodirbek, by the way, plays fast. Like, the thing about Nodirbek is he also plays fast. He's not just like getting to these positions and burning all his time. He's actually like, he's really quick on the clock too. He's always putting pressure. So rook to b4 by Gukesh. And now g4 from Nodirbek, a fascinating concept. Rook c5, f3 stabilizing. And finally, things are going wrong for Gukesh. Finally. Like, it took 45 moves, but rook f7 check, and it's not looking good, right? It is not looking good. Gukesh is now down 2 pawns. King to e8. There is a hanging knight here. There is a hanging rook, but a very nice move here. Knight to d3, counterattacking both rooks. Rook b1 check played, king g2, rook c3, and we get knight e5 first. And takes and takes. So the way Nodirbek tries to convert this position is 4 pawns versus nothing. He is trying to get to an endgame where he gets rook g6 and rook h6. And this is winning for White. Four extra pawns, yeah, it's a win for White. The only reason that he can't do it yet is because the Black king will play defense. So rook a2, king f8, rook g6. And Gukesh has to play knight takes e4. By the way, you cannot even take this knight because rook endgames are all draws. It's pretty fascinating, but this is a drawn endgame because there's no mate, and by the time you take this, I take this, and there you go. Now rook e2. Rook to g5, rook h6. Nodirbek has 20 minutes more on the clock and 3 pawns, and Gukesh has not gone down. He hasn't fallen. Knight to c5, rook c6. The knight has to go all the way to the edge of the board. What you don't want to do here with white is probably rush a rook trade because it's going to be hard to push all your pawns, but it is a very, very nice position to have. All right, rook a6, knight c5, rook a8 check, fine. Rook f6 also was probably a good move. Rook a8 check, king f7, it is +3. And now the winning move here for white is h6. Obvious plan. Black can go king g6, and now you have to find rook h8. And this completely ridiculous defensive setup for white is winning because you play rook e7 and rook g7. You hunt out the king, and this is winning. So for example, rook d7, rook d5, rook e7. It looks like you're mated, by the way, but you're not because you can always run forward. So instead of rook d2, let's say rook d7 to stop this. Check, give up your pawn. Check, king h5, rook e1. That is what Nodirbek has to find. He has to find h6, rook h8, hunt the king out there with his rooks, and then mate him from the other side. That is the only winning plan. Gukesh has made this unbelievably difficult for white, and Nodirbek goes here, and once the king is out, it's going to be a lot harder to win the game. He tries the similar kind of concept, but suddenly, oh my, knight f4 check is winning the game for black. And Gukesh coordinates his rooks and knights perfectly to launch a counterattack, and Nodirbek has to hold black. He can't allow any more counterplay. Rook c2, rook c1, and the game ends in a draw repetition after 66 moves. And why did white not go here? Rook e2. Check and mate along this rank, and that is not something that he wanted to entertain. What's crazy is that this is actually still a draw with g5, king f7, and rook b8. And apparently the 3-pawn versus rook endgame is a draw, but I mean, you need to be a psychopath to play like that. Crazy game. And I mean, all of Gukesh's pawns were falling. Every single one. Nodirbek was, I mean, this man was a man on a mission, on fire, playing this game, and he wasn't able to break through. And Gukesh just unbelievable defense. And this is the sign of a champ. You know, a sign of a champion is someone who does not lose positions, who is staying even-keeled, even when things are difficult. And I mean, this is all you have to know about this game. If he can save positions and win them when he is winning, I mean, he's going to be a champ multiple times, and he will be 2,800 because the way he plays is amazing. Now I have to show you some standings. So, like I said, there were not many decisive games this round, but Sarana shook up some standings. Prague and Nodirbek remain tied, and Gukesh as well. And now we have another member of the 3.5 score group. Players obviously at the bottom. Aragaisi made a very quick draw with Fabiano. I was actually slightly surprised. And these are the challengers. Erwin Lamy is having a great event, but not too many changes there as well. I think only one decisive game. 2, Suleimanli, who's in 4th, defeated Idris Gurel. Idris having a tough tournament. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.